OK, this week saw Rodri lift the Ballon d'Or for the very first time. Congratulations to him. Plenty of debate, wasn't there, Joe? About that. I mean, for me, I think unbelievable player, by the way. Well worthy of the win. But, of course, he has been injured. He's out for a long period of time. So it did get us thinking about the best midfielders currently in the Premier League without him.
Yeah, he's played just 66 minutes of Premier League football this season. So we wanted to know who you guys think has filled the void as the Premier League's best midfielder just this season, though. Not historically, not who's had the greatest achievements. This season, who has been playing the best. You can select defensive midfielders, attacking midfielders, central midfielders, but they've got to play well this season. Spencer, you're going to be leading this one.
Yeah.
Go from 10 up to 1. Interesting, this one.
Reverse order.
It's an interesting one because there's a lot of little caveats I'll throw out there. First of all, I'd say a lot of these formations are very fluid these days.
They are.
What even is a centre midfielder these days? I think outside of a CDM who holds that shape, a lot of these guys move and they go out wide and they come in. So there's that to bear in mind. And I also think, you know, I am obviously a fan of one of the non-top 6 clubs, and I think that sometimes they get a lot of attention. I think what I want to do with this is look at the people that are actually driving their teams forward. And maybe you wouldn't say they're the most talented necessarily, but they are playing the most important football this year.
Yeah.
So, that being said,
so I can agree with Spencer. It's tricky from the point of view that you've got AMs, you've got DMs, you've got... There's people that play in various roles.
Very subjective.
Right now, who is the 10th best midfielder in the Premier League for you?
So I've actually gone with Buonanotte because, well, a couple of reasons, really. So he's obviously very young. You know, he's come into Leicester on loan from Brighton. Another one of these Brighton, you know, just conveyor belts of wonder kids. But he's come into a team, a recently promoted team, a team that, you know, a lot of people were tipping to struggle, and they have done quite well so far, relatively speaking. And he's been at the heart of a lot of their good attacking work, I think, and really excited to see what he can do. But I've really enjoyed, when I have watched Leicester, he's just sort of taken a lot of it on his shoulders. He's very happy to receive the ball and just make things happen. He plays beyond his age, you know.
I think that's a good shout to do as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a relegation scrapping side, being able to stand out for sort of your technical level, because obviously a lot of dog work is having to be done around you. But if you are able to get on the ball, like you say, turn, bring other players into the game, I think he's got 6 goal involvements already this season.
3 goals, 2 assists, 5 goal involvements for Leicester, which is good. 24.25 passes per match. What have you made of him, Mina?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, when you're in a lower-sided team, it's difficult to stand out in comparison to maybe the top 6 or the top 8. But if Leicester do go down, and I hope they don't, but if they do go down, I wouldn't be surprised if someone in the mid side of the table picks him up.
Well, maybe he goes back to Brighton.
Well, yeah, they're so good at that, aren't they? Just knowing exactly when to give the youngsters time, when to loan them out.
Yeah.
They almost never miss. It seems like with Brighton.
Forget, like, they had Victor Gyökeres.
Yeah.
Like, they've always got a player
absolutely flying at the minute, by the way.
So he's in 10th.
Number 9, then.
So this next one, obviously, positionally speaking, is very versatile and he can play in more forward areas. I wanted to have someone from Villa in there. So I've gone with Morgan Rogers. You know, again, he's come up from the Championship. He's come in and he's been trusted instantly, really, hasn't he? With a plethora of talent in and around that squad on the bench. You know, there was obviously, you could look at T. Elements as well. You could look at the starting Nana's had in more sort of defensive positions. But for me, really like watching him. It's been great for me in FPL, which is a massive part of this list, I'm not going to lie. And, I just think he needs to be recognised, playing behind, obviously, like Ollie Watkins in there and making a big difference.
Yeah, it's tough, I think, sometimes making that step up from the Championship, isn't it? But you've seen it being done more in recent years. Players like Jarrod Bowen coming in and doing it. Morgan Rogers, given that it was a January signing, just looks like it was no problem at all.
I might have had him maybe one step up, but I think people overlook the qualities that he has for Aston Villa. It's not just, you know, his ability, maybe the physical aspect of the game, but it's also, you know, one thing that stands out for me is, one, the way that he presses in Unai Emery's system, and B, you know, his ability on the ball, because he's quite strong and physical, and not just that, he's got a technical level of driving the ball forward. It makes it very difficult for opponents to kind of stop him. Like, you can see him coming, but you can't stop it. And I would have had him maybe one level up.
Do you know what? I might have had him a bit higher as well. 2 goals, 2 assists. Villa, of course, 4th in the league, 22 years of age.
That performance against Arsenal,
talking. I think he's been brilliant.
He's one of these players that seems to be thriving on the opportunities he's been given. And, you know, he's played for all the age groups for England as well. I think he'll get a senior call-up imminently. And I expect him to do well when he gets one as well. There's a lot of good players in that position, obviously, for England. But, I do enjoy watching him.
OK, number 8.
So next...
Who have you gone with?
Again, the start that Brighton have made this season is sensational. And the youngest manager in Premier League history. Belieber, I think, is probably the next big transfer out of Brighton. You know, we're talking about these big values. Oh, I mean, with Brighton's sort of strategy, it's got to be kind of north of 80 million these days, doesn't it? Whether he goes for that, I don't know. What I'm saying is that he's the one who's getting the game time. He's kind of made himself very important in that central midfield area. And I just love everything about the way Brighton do business, to be honest with you. And then they always have a next player coming through. But we're talking about the players here, and I think they look much better when he plays, and I think that he had to be recognised.
I'd agree with that, actually. I think he's been brilliant. Third most interceptions of any Premier League midfielder. He's still only 20 years of age. He's got a goal and an assist in that as well.
Do you know what I think as well? He obviously had that first season to bed in a little bit and took his time. That often happens with young players, doesn't he, given he is only
20.
He's only 20. But now he just physically dominates games for a 20-year-old.
It's not even just a physical aspect. I think he can play like two roles for Brighton. He plays as a box-to-box sometimes. I watched him at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea. I watched him against United when United lost 2-1. But he can also play that more forward role because he's good on the ball. It's not just the physical aspect of his game, but also he can play as a DM if necessary, where he sits in front of the back line and is able to pass. He's got 90% pass accuracy this season. And I agree with Spence. He's going to be the next big thing out of Brighton more than
OK. And speaking of Brighton, it brings us nicely to our next player.
Continuing
Brighton man.
Continuing the Brighton loving.
Wow. Chelsea fans will be saying this is low, Spence.
Well, it is. And listen, it's impossible to have a sort of unbiased opinion on Caicedo because not just the amount of money he went in for, but also like he represents that whole crazy £1 billion expenditure in a way, doesn't he? And I think until this season, it's been heavy on his shoulders. But what we're starting to see now is the Caicedo that Chelsea believe they were getting when they bought him. An instrumental player in the midfield, and it's really weird. I have a really weird relationship with Chelsea at the moment, which is like when they spent all that money and it was kind of a little bit anti-football in my opinion. I didn't want them to do well, but then they've become the underdogs in a way, and now it's weird you spend $1 billion and become the underdogs, and now they're sneaking back up on people. I kind of like watching them get back. Yeah, exactly. And Maresca sort of has his squad now, I think, and he said it himself. Loads of players, sure, but I'm not using half of them. And he is instrumental, more so, I would say, than Fernandes in that midfield.
Let's bring Mina in. Where do you think Caicedo ranks right now in terms of the best Premier League midfielders?
I'd have him slightly higher. But also it's difficult because you're probably including attacking midfielders, central midfielders in this. So it's quite difficult to take that into consideration. But if you actually think about like the DMs in Europe, I think Caicedo is in top 5 right now this season because how instrumental he's been for Chelsea. I think he's also showing the attacking side of his game, you know, progressing the ball, getting the ball forward. But I like his partnership that's starting to grow with Lavia. I really like that partnership. Enzo Maresca briefly mentioned it in the press conference about Enzo Fernandez and trying to find somewhere to fit Enzo because I think Lavia and Caicedo are that base of the midfield. When you have a big price tag, the criticism is going to be loud, but I equally think that the respect needs to be given as well when they're performing well. I think Caicedo, I maybe would have had him 6th or 5th, but I can't be mad at it because you've probably got some attacking midfielders coming up in this list as well.
There's rumours that Enzo could be out of there at some point if they get an offer that recoups a little bit of their money, sort of 80 mil mark. They might let Enzo, and that's because he's doing such a good job. Right, next up.
Wow, above Caicedo. Spence, is this the West Ham creeping through in you here? Be honest.
I mean, probably. I do love Declan Rice. I also think that, you know, Arsenal, whilst they have dropped some points recently, they're still very much in it, and they've had a lot of, you know, and they like to tell us how many injuries they've had, but they have. They have had a lot, and particularly in that midfield area, without Ødegaard, it becomes a very different team, and he is the mainstay. Now, he doesn't always...
so important for Arsenal.
Exactly. He doesn't always jump off the page in terms of what he does, and he has really good attacking inputs these days as well. But if he was to get injured now, I think they'd have some significant problems, and that's why I've put him up there.
What do you reckon, Mina?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Declan Rice is a great player, but you know, if you're talking DMs, he's definitely one of the best DMs right now in England, without a doubt. And with Arsenal missing quite a few players, he's kind of stepped up and been that kind of controller in the midfield. If they lose him to injury, it would be very unfortunate. They would have a big hole similar to the Ødegaard one. So I kind of, 6 out, I can't argue that.
OK, we're going to the top 5 now, so...
Sure. We've got to obviously get some Man City guys in there.
Bernardo Silva.
He's another one that drifts in a multitude of positions, isn't he? But, you know, we'll talk about it in another player I'm going to put in a minute. But with the Rodri injury, as we mentioned there, you know, there were some question marks about what was going to happen to City's season. So far, they've been able to maintain the levels, haven't they? Still unbeaten in the Prem, and he's one of the many reasons for that.
Have you got another City player next?
I have. Should go back to back.
Back to back.
This one more so.
Kovacic above Bernardo. Why have you gone
above Caicedo?
For a couple of reasons. It's expectation. So I think he was the name that was said a lot when Rodri got injured. It was like, oh, we're going to have to deal with Kovacic in there, and it's like, well, no, he's been really good. He's been really good. Is he Rodri? No. But he's getting goal contributions. You know, just as Rodri's added into his game the last few years, he mentioned it in his Ballon d'Or speech. Yeah. He's doing that in filling that hole very well indeed. You know, Gundogan, who was brought back in, it looked like a genius transfer last minute, out of nowhere, especially in the light of the Rodri injury, hasn't actually found those levels again yet for me, and I think he's been able to carry the weight.
Mina, your thoughts on the order?
Now that I see Kovacic and Declan Rice at 6, question marks. But I agree with I agree with the notion that filling Rodri's boots is not an easy one. I think Kovacic, even Mateus Nunes, has been doing pretty well for City as well, and they've got a good crop of players in the midfield. I think, you know, his ability to not only just get goals but kind of get involved in the gameplay, get the ball forward, pass the ball, and create. You know, and you lot know City sit in front of the opponent's box predominantly throughout the game. So in order to keep recycling the ball, having someone like Kovacic is important. I think maybe it's because he's come in and Rodri's gone out for the entire season. He's done a good impression, so maybe that's why he's fourth. Yeah, so I'm seeing Declan Rice at 6. I'm thinking, yeah.
I think what I'm focusing on maybe is more than other people is their importance to their team. You know, not so much about how technically good they are, and I think he's very important right now.
The amount of injuries that you've got. I mean, KDB out, Rodri out, like Savinho now out, Grealish is out, the back line, Rodri, Diaz is out. There's so many injuries that I think.
You've got to recognise the fact that these guys are top of the league. Okay, you know, they're top of the league.
Let's go into the top three then. Who have you got as the third best midfielder in the Premier League right now?
Pains me to do it, but I've got a Spurs player in there.
What season he's having, by the way?
He's unreal, to be honest. I got in there early on FPL as well, so I'm really happy with that because he's been flying for me. But, yeah, I think, again, you look at some of the big names and the transfers and the people you expect to stand out for Spurs, but he's just been the mainstay in the midfield, and he's obviously playing a bit deeper than he had been maybe in the other formations last year. He was playing right of a front three a little bit more, but he's found his spot and he's keeping it, and he looks like one of the most informed players in the Premier League.
Yeah, do you know what's amazing? I think it's a really good point, actually, because he was predominantly used out wide last season as a winger. He's coming into this, like, he's almost playing 2 10s with Maddison and Kulusevski in the centre with one sitting, and like, he's just been so involved in everything. There was a stat doing the rounds as of last week that he was first in Europe's top 5 leagues for most key passes, most progressive runs, most accelerations and most completions, and most dribbles per 90 of any player in the Premier League. Is that where he should be playing then for you when you look at those stats and those numbers, that he is a player that's more suited in the centre?
I feel like the way that Ange has moved him in a bit centrally, you mentioned the stats, but even if you think about the quality that he adds to Spurs, they have the second highest possession in the Premier League, and some of that is because of his energy, and not just in keeping possession but retaining possession, you know, closing the passing lanes. He's a big part of Ange's pressing system, getting forward, and I think when it comes to like midfielders, I think energy is kind of overlooked because to get up and down the pitch consistently throughout the game. I watched him at Old Trafford against Manchester United and he absolutely bossed the midfield. So top 3, I can agree with that. I think
he's less predictable in the middle as well. It's very hard to know where he's going to go.
Still 2 then.
He's one of those players that sort of plays in slow motion, and also he's much younger than people. He looks, basically. He looks older than he is, but he's got a great career ahead of him.
City midweek as well. Right, top 2.
Well, again, might be controversial, but I'm looking at the importance to the team and maybe the difference between what we've seen of them before. This guy has become maybe the most important player in the new look Liverpool system for me.
The most important player,
well, maybe, because you think about where Liverpool have looked like they've struggled probably since Fabinho left. In that CDM, they got Endo last year and they've tried to make McAllister to sit deeper. And, you know, maybe he's not talked about enough how good a job Slot is doing. He's come in, he's followed one of the most popular Liverpool managers of all time.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
You know, and I think because he was so popular, Klopp, he probably got less stick than maybe sometimes he deserved, in terms of he didn't actually win loads of things. Yeah, it feels like it was this trophy-laden era of Liverpool, and it was relative to what came before that. But I mean, compared to City and things like that, it wasn't. So Arne Slot's come in, and it could have been a real tough act to follow, and things could still go wrong. But he's just made them very solid defensively, and I think him at the heart of the midfield is massive. You know, you're looking at players like you talked about De Ligt earlier from Man United, who was at Bayern as well as Juve, didn't quite work out for him. You got Kulusevski, who's also at Juve, another player. These clubs are prepared to let go, but it being turned into something that is working really well. He's a great advert for that. You know, he's a young, really hotly tipped player from Netherlands. Wasn't working at Bayern Munich. He's come in here. It looks like a world pick.
Brilliant. And give us your number 1. I think we can all guess which magnet holds hand. Cole Palmer. Is he the best player? You've got him as your best midfielder in the Premier League. Do you think he's the best player in form in the Premier League right now?
Sometimes, you know, the Ballon d'Or, sometimes it lags a little bit behind reality. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes the voting is almost done 6 months in people's mind. They look at the summer tournaments and things. He should have been way higher on that list for me. Cole Palmer should have been way higher on that. I know we've got Premier League bias, we've got England bias, whatever, but there's some players on that list that I mean, what he's doing statistically is
unbelievable. 7 goals and 5 assists
for Pedro Neto.
The pass was outrageous. Mina, where do you think he ranks in terms of best players
Best players in the league, he's definitely up there. I think it's difficult because Mohamed Salah, Bukayo Saka, they're so integral for their team. But I think Cole Palmer, the reason why he gets so much praise is because this is his second year as a starter at Chelsea. Last season, he had over 30 goal involvements for them, and he's kind of continued with that. That hat-trick he scored against Brighton, phenomenal. The free kick, amazing. I can't argue with him at number 1.
Cool. OK, so there is confirmation of the top 10 midfielders in the Premier League right now, according to Spencer. Should we shout out some names that are not on there? Tillemans, not on the list.
Dwight McNeil.
Dwight McNeil, 3 goals, 3 assists. Smith Rowe.
I feel bad for not having a Forest player, and that's what I say before.
Elliot Anderson, could have been in that.
But let us know what you think at home of that.